Good morning, all. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar from Numerics on what merchants need to know to prepare for the 8-digit BIN. This session today will be conducted in English. With you, we have myself, Vanessa Sierra Monteiro, who's part of the client readiness team, and I lead the Numerics initiative for Visa. And with me, I have Marcus Vendruscolo, who is the Merchant Sales and Solutions for the Americas. He is the MSNA person that is leading this initiative as well. So just to go over some logistical information, please use your Q&A feature to submit any questions throughout the presentation. If we do not address your question during the webinar, we will make sure that your account manager or your account executive does reach out with a response. Attendees are in listen-only mode throughout the entirety of the webinar. We will be using that Q&A feature to communicate. There is a post-webinar survey that will pop up at the end of the session. So please, we appreciate any feedback that you can give us with that session on how we did. This session is being recorded, and we hope to be able to post this session on visa.com and Visa Online once it is complete. Additionally, I just want to let you know that a copy of this presentation will be made available after this webinar for you to download directly from WebEx. In case you're not familiar with how the Q&A feature works, you just click on the Q&A button that's on your bottom right hand of your screen. The window will be blue when it is active. Make sure that you type in your question and you choose host and presenter to share, and then click send. So with that, let's get started. So what merchants need to know to prepare for 8-digit BIN? I'm very appreciative of you guys taking the time to participate in today's session. We are eager to address your questions on this subject. Implementing a global industry standard is not a typical new product launch. For one thing, Visa does not use the issuing BIN in our financial messages, transactions based in 8-digit BIN flow through VisaNet, just as the 6-digit transaction would flow with a 6-digit BIN. Based on our discussions with merchants and other partners around the world, we understand that many of you use the 6-digit BIN to inform business decisions and processes. If so, it's important to note that by April 2022, you need to be able to change your approach to make these same decisions. Visa announced our program nearly 5 years ago to give you plenty of time to develop and implement your plan. And we've been working alongside since then. At this webinar, we're going to be addressing the merchant perspective. Our discussions with merchants and the acquiring community have identified several areas of high interest that we will be highlighting today. So going from left to right, we want to be sure you all understand what this means for the card issuance and when you will start seeing 8-digit BINs at the point of sale. Specific to merchants, we'll share learnings from some research Visa commissioned about impacts of the standard changes of the selling environment. Very relevant if you are using the 6-digit BIN for any of your operations or processes. We'll continue to reinforce the need to be sure any data you are using is from your acquirers based on authorized sources and what this means for routing. And other topics that come up frequently is PCI impact. We'll also cover that as well. So to start, I want to be sure there is a common understanding of BIN as well as what is changing with the new standard. So it might be a little repetitive to some of you, but we want to make sure we have a foundation. Bank identification number, is also known as BIN, is used across the industry to facilitate the identification of individual issuers. Our specific Visa definition is this is a number assigned by ISO, or the International Organization for Standardization, to Visa, licensed by Visa to our clients, and that is always the beginning of an account number. Visa has an agreement with ISO for the 4 series of BINs. Even with this industry standard change, Visa will continue to exclusively use the 4 for our BIN. No change, no matter the length to our issuing BINs. Okay, so it's really important. Visa is number 4. The account range is not changing with the new BIN standard. It remains as the first 9 digits of the PAN. On the card shown here, we have the number 5 underlined to illustrate this. Visa uses the 9-digit account range for processing parameters and to identify the product. And although a common misconception is that the PAN length is going to change, it is staying the same. There is no impact no matter what the BIN length is. So the only change in the BIN may be the first 6 or the first 8 numbers of the primary account number. Why did the industry BIN standard change? Just to add 2 extra numbers. Quite simply, the payment industry is the victim of its own success. The unprecedented growth in payments increased the demand for BINs to a point that the industry supply was declining at an increasingly rapid pace. ISO raised this topic in 2015 and assembled the payments leaders from around the world to come to a solution. After much deliberation, they agreed to increase the length of the BIN from 6 to 8 digits. This was the less impactful option. They announced this change in January of 2017, and Visa shortly followed to be sure that our clients had as much advance notice as possible and were aware of the effective dates of the change was April 2022 for processors in the selling environment. We understand other schemes are working towards the same date. One question we get quite a bit is when will all cards based on 8-digit BINs start appearing at merchant locations, physical and online? We don't control the other payment schemes, obviously, but from a Visa standpoint, Visa will only assign 8-digit BINs after April 2022, and we will no longer be assigning 6-digit BINs. We have not announced a deadline for issuers to migrate their current 6 digits to 8 digits, but we are highly encouraging them to do so. We have introduced new pricing and programs to encourage adoption in the 2022 to 2023 time period. In 2019, we began to assign new 8-digit BINs and have had clients who have converted their existing 6-digit portfolios. The reason you're not seeing any impact is that we've not assigned any of those with the same 6-digit prefix to other clients. So anything that was returned to us, we have yet to reassign. Quite simply, because when an 8-digit BIN is created, the one 6-digit BIN explodes out to 100 8-digit BINs. And then the same 6 digits will be at the beginning of 100 8-digit BINs. So right now we're protecting 8-digit BIN assignments and conversions. But sometime after April 2022, we will lift those protections and 8-digit BINs with the same 6-digit number prefix will be assigned at the start of an 8-digit to different issuers and different countries for different products. So here's an example to illustrate how this will work. As you see here, the issuer from Canada decides to convert the consumer credit BIN to 8 digits. So we're starting off with 404665. They will take this one 6-digit BIN and convert it to 100 8-digit BINs. This, we also refer to it as expanding or exploding out the BIN. Very likely, they will not need 100 of those 8-digit BINs. In this example, they will only need 2. So they release 98 8-digit BINs back to Visa. In time, Visa will license this 8-digit BINs, all with the same 6-digit numbers to the start, to different clients. In the example here, an issuer in Spain for a debit portfolio, a Russian issuer for a prepaid program, and to an issuer in the US for a prepaid FSA or flexible spending account, which is a benefit type popular in the US, and to Japanese issuer with a corporate credit portfolio. I hope this makes the implementations a little bit more real so you begin to think, what if we were still only looking at the first 6 digits in the PAN as part of our operations? With this slide, I'd like to draw your attention to the use of account ranges, or as Visa defines it, the first 9 digits of the PAN. As I briefly mentioned, we use the account range to identify products and for many other purposes. For many years now, we have encouraged issuers to consolidate multiple products on a single BIN using account ranges. Note that we do maintain distinct BINs by funding source. Prepaid goes with prepaid, debit with debit, and credit with credit. and whether it is a consumer or commercial. But more and more clients are maximizing the use of their bins by differentiating at the account range level. This is an example from a European issuer. You can see that the account ranges on there includes important information about product type, countries, and currency. The country rights are linked to the regulatory rights to passport in Europe. As a business, setting up your systems to read just the first 6 or 8 digits of the PAN will not be enough, as it is important to know what product type, currency, and country. This is true for 6 digits where there are 1,000 ranges, or for 8 digits where there are 10 different ranges and up to 10 million cards. If you are only relying on the BIN, you will be missing important product and acceptance information that impacts fees, loyalty options, and much more. As more issuers adopt account ranges, it will become increasingly risky to rely on the BIN for authorization, routing, and transaction clearing. I hope this makes the implications a little bit more real so you can begin to think through what if they're still only using the first 6 digits of the PAN in your operations. Based on our discussions with merchants and other partners around the world, we know that your operations and processes vary considerably, which means that the consequences of not being ready for this change will also vary for each one of you. It is impossible to provide a one-size-fits-all scenario. Risk will vary based on if, and if so, how you are using 6-digit bins today. A few consequences if you are using the 6-digit bin in areas not prepared could be the reduced efficiencies and possible interruptions to processing capabilities. Other examples of disruptions include unnecessary declines, rejections, misrouting, gaps in fraud management defenses, inconsistencies in reporting, increased reconciliation costs. If you don't prepare now, your business will likely be disadvantaged. We don't know how long your assessment or change processes will take, as well as those of your associated partners and vendors. But we have heard in many cases it requires extended timelines. We've been hearing about 12 to 18 months once you've lined up development resources and completed your internal testing. So let's take a look at a few scenarios that happens now, but with the transition to the BIN world to 8 digits will likely occur more frequently. So here's an example that illustrates both lost revenue and inefficiencies. This is a scenario we have experienced in our 6-digit world, and it stems from using bad data at the point of sale to drive fraud decisions. We anticipate it will occur much more frequently as clients begin to convert their 6-digit bins to 8-digit bins. Since increasingly 8-digit bins will have the same 6-digit prefix and will be assigned to new issuers. Remember in the first example where we showed the issuer returning 98 of their converted 8-digit bins? That's the scenarios we're talking about. In this case, an Eastern European issuer converts a 6-digit credit bin, and a new issuer in the US receives one of their released 8-digit bins, which they will be used for a credit program. All goes well through the launch, and then there are reports that a large merchant continues to decline transaction attempts from the new cardholders. The issuer, the acquirer, and Visa do not have visibility and cannot explain what's going on. Eventually, it becomes clear that the merchant is not using the 6-digit bin to drive, the 6-digit bin to drive fraud decisioning and sourcing their data from a table they bought from an internet source. They have coded all Eastern European bins as do not accept, which means an 8-digit bin converted from the original 6 digits are getting blocked for no reason. This was one risk that was apparent to Visa based on experience, and we wanted to understand other risks or impacts that you might encounter as well. In 2020, Visa engaged Deloitte Consulting to conduct interviews to better understand how our clients were using the issuing BIN. As I said before, one of the unique aspects of this change is that Visa does not use the BIN in transaction processing. The BIN does not take place in any part of VisaNet, authorization, clearing, or settlement, and it has limited visibility to clients' proprietary processing and downstream applications. We talked to leading payment leaders like you with businesses in over 90 countries to understand where are you using the BINs, what were your challenges in complying with this new standard, and your review overall and how we could best support you. We used a standard questionnaire to go through various capability areas in the payment process and listened. Overall, our primary takeaway from the Deloitte study was that every client is different. We can't generalize by country, by segment, by size. You're all quite unique in how you manage your businesses and how you manage your setups from your service providers. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to share some key findings from the Deloitte study that will highlight the broad impact and industry changes may have. These examples are not meant to be comprehensive, but are meant to stimulate your thought process and help you think through on how to conduct your own impact assessments, which is key in finding out what needs to be changed, if anything. For each category, we'll provide the potential risk and provide some data to help guide your review of those potential consequences to moving to the 8-digit BIN. Let's start with the potential risk to transaction processing. More than 2/3 of interview participants identified impacts to the merchant point of sale. The most typical examples for the use of the 6-digit BIN at the point of sale includes PIN bypass eligibility for MagStripe transactions and merchant choice routing. Almost half of the interview participants identified POS terminals with hard-coded logic based on the 6-digit BIN. It is important to say that this was a small subset of all terminals, but any disruption was considered significant. Over half expect an impact to the BIN tables that they load to terminals or referenced via a terminal management system. Since we also have acquirers taking part in this session, I will add the subset of acquirers that uses the first 6 digits of the PAN to route transactions identified broad impacts across transaction processing. For example, identifying product types, debit, credit, and prepaid, and service eligibility, such as installments or cashback. Other examples I'll call out include identifying international or US transactions. If the 6-digit BIN is used as part of the clearing and settlement or accounting and reconciliation process, potential impacts include identification of the merchant discount rate or interchange postings and fee reconciliations. The impact assessment interviews were a wake-up call for all acquirers that said they were using third-party data tables and were limited to 6 digits. They realized they will need to update their approach for routing logic, processing logic, or applicable tables to accommodate 8 digits. Another area in risk to compliance and fraud processes. This is when the 6-digit BIN is used as a data element in the risk rules for transaction authorizations, such as BIN block for sanction reasons. Overall, about 2/3 of the participants interviewed identified impact to fraud rules, reports, and supporting systems because they based them on 6-digit BINs. Examples include fraud monitoring activities and alerts. For select acquirers, merchants define custom rules on acquirers' platforms that include BIN in a combination with other elements. The participants that use the BIN as part of the fraud rules identified varying levels of impact, ranging all the way from minor configuration updates to broader system changes. Remember, we said there's not one size fits all. Fraud reporting was also identified as an impact area. An example of a reporting impact is segmentation of summary fraud statistic reports by 6-digit issuing BIN. 25% of interview participants confirmed they used the 6-digit BIN in reporting, and this might as well be higher as a good number, 35%, after the interviews were going to dig deeper. And now the risk to service and dispute management. 60% of interview participants performed searches by 6-digit BIN. On the reporting side for acquirers, most interviewed did not use the 6-digit BIN in internal or third-party reporting. However, select acquirers do provide data and reporting to merchants that include BIN. Over half of all interview participants store the 6-digit BIN as a data element outside their core processing systems. For example, acquirers and acquire processors interviewed store BIN within the data tables in merchant preprocessors, terminal processing platforms, interactive voice response applications, and merchant servicing portals. Interview participants that do not store BIN as a separate element do refer to it as part of the PAN when required, or from other data elements, example, BIN range tables, token, proxy PANs, etc. Knowing the increasing importance of downstream systems and services, we want to be sure you interrogate these closely and update to accommodate the new bin names and latest industry practices. PCI was a frequent topic during these impact assessment interviews, and there have been recent clarifications to the PCI standard. While Visa does not establish the PCI DSS standards as the Payment Card Industry Standards and Industry Security Standards Council is an independent organization, Visa has been actively working with stakeholders in the ecosystem to review that our approach addresses the concerns raised. We want to be sure you're thinking through applying them with the new 8-digit BIN standard. Prior to diving into the details, I will preface that Visa is not providing advice about compliance. Merchants need to review any changes to how they plan to protect their data with the qualified security assessor. No impact for PAN data displayed on reports, screens, or receipts. Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards, PCI DSS, allow users with a legitimate business need to see any or all of the PAN digits. Some merchants have inquired about display of PAN on the receipts. Industry adoption typically only displays the last 4 digits of the card number on the receipt. This practice falls under the masking requirements and doesn't change whether it's a 6 or 8-digit BIN. The other relevant standard applies to protecting data at rest. Security mechanisms to protect PAN data at rest include PAN truncation and PAN encryption. Truncation is a method of rendering a full PAN unreadable by permanently removing a segment of the PAN data. This applies to PANs that are electronically stored. Encryption is a method that applies a reversible algorithm to secure the PAN or the specific digits within the PAN, such that the PAN or its digits is available to any entity with the cryptographic keys. This is where Visa has recently provided update clarification. Truncation standards have been clarified to allow for the maximum of the first 8 digits of the card number plus any other 4 digits. This means that only 4 digits need to be removed. This is a change from the previously industry practice of maximum of first 6 digits and any other 4. The industry practice of first 6 and last 4 was developed to address a variety of business needs. For data at rest situations, it is up to your business to decide the best course of action. If leaving the truncation at the first 6 and any other 4, inclusive of 8-digit BINs, does not impact your business practices, you should continue to do so as it adheres to the current PCI standard. Visa recommends that you evaluate your business process and dependencies to see if a change is required to truncate to the maximum of first 8 digits plus any other 4. We are reminding merchants they need to review any changes to how they plan to protect their data with a qualified security assessor because Visa does not use the BIN field in the transaction processing. We do not have any specific recommendation for how merchants who need to expose the full BIN for their own business reasons should manage that data perfection. Okay, now we will share one final scenario. This one illustrates impact for quickly growing business segments. So in this final scenario, we have a frustrated cardholder from the US trying to use their new credit card for a bill pay situation and a subscription to a streaming channel. Now, we've all been using our streaming channels during this pandemic. This is an extremely large business segment and continues to grow. Why do they keep getting declined? Quite simply because the US issuer is using a new 8-digit BIN assignment that was released after a Canadian issuer converted one of their 6-digit gift cards, non-reloadable prepaid, BINs to 8 digits and returned what they didn't need to Visa. So once again, the issuer, the acquirer, and Visa can't explain what's happening. The cardholder's frustrated and the merchants are losing business. We shared this example to reinforce the importance of planning ahead. Not changing may have impacts to your efficiencies as well as your revenues. Once you complete your planning and do understand the impacts of your business, it is very doubtful your changes, as well as those of your partners, middleware, hardware, and any other equipment vendor, can happen in a matter of days, weeks, or even a few months. And this underscores the conclusion from the Deloitte study, which Visa wholeheartedly embraces. Prompt action is required. The changes to your operations may require extended timelines and must be coordinated with your partners. If you haven't launched your 8-digit plan with a thorough assessment, the time is now. If you started, I recommend taking an objective look. Is your assessment broad enough? Does it include your entire organization? Have you reached out to all your vendors that support you and all the clients that you serve? And if nothing else, use only authorized table from your acquirer to support your operations. Reach out to your acquirer regarding authorized tables and do not buy bin tables off the internet. We know that this data is not currently based on marketplace issues we have dealt with in a strictly 6-digit world. This will become more problematic, especially as issuers are converting to the new 8-digit standard. I also want to underscore that the Visa tables are not based on BIN. We provide account range, issuer ID, acquire ID, and other numerics to provide you with the routing, clearing, and acceptance information that is needed for seamless operation. Quite simply, if you need to know about the products, currencies, or countries of issuance, it is no longer possible to rely on just the issuing BIN. So what should you be doing now? And we've also been recently asked, is it too late if you haven't started yet? No, it's not too late, but this needs to be a priority for your organization. The single most important thing you can do right now is conduct an impact assessment. You need to know what you're working with. The second step is to create your plan. Make sure you work across business lines. Work with your acquirer and your partners who support your business. And finally, implement the plan and test with all relevant stakeholders, such as your acquirer, your processor, and your partners. Visa has quite a few resources available to get you started. Here's a quick snapshot of our resources that are available on visa.com for merchants and on Visa Online. These include even more. Take the time to review these resources to help you understand the potential impacts. We won't go through each one, but I do want to call out that the questionnaire Deloitte used is available. The questionnaires will help you do your own impact review across your organization with your partners. We have also created a merchant action sheet that will tell you the key activities to undertake at the beginning. There are a number of other resources you can find on visa.com, and we are making this presentation available at this end of the session. So let me do a quick recap and then we'll open up for questions. So for a quick recap of highlights, I want to set the stage for opening up for questions. The primary account number is not changing, and neither is the account range, which is the foundation for our product ID and an increasing number of product and processing parameters. The account range is staying at 9 digits. 8-digit BINs are making their way into the market now, and after April 2022, ISO and the payment schemes will stop protecting those assignments, which is why we want to be sure the selling environment is ready. We have quite a few clients in LAC region and across the world that are already expanded from 6 digits to 8 digits or have requested new 8-digit BINs that are out there and currently being processed. If you haven't done so already, conduct an impact assessment to understand if and where you're using 6-digit BIN for any of your operations or processes. We'll continue to reinforce the need to be sure any data you are using is from your acquirers based on authorized Visa sources. Visa processing and routing is not based on the BIN. If you need to make changes, be sure you are basing your changes on the account range. That's the first 9, and that is what's found on the on the RDEF tables. Be aware of what's changed for PCI and what has not. You may need to involve your quality security assessor to validate assumptions and plans. Remember, the receipt requirements are not changing. Okay? So with that, I want to go ahead and open up for questions. I want to just remind you that if you do have any questions, to please submit them through the Q&A panel on the lower right-hand corner. Make sure you're showing it to the presenter and the host. So the first question I have is, hello, do we know which bins have been migrated to 8-digit? Is the Visa bin sharing service updated with which frequency? Thanks. So the Visa bin sharing service, the Visa bin attribute service, is known as VBAS. It is updated daily. It will have this information, and it is the only table that will actually tell you if a bin is 6 digits or 8 digits. But it does have all the other information as well, such as the issuing ID, acquiring ID, country, product, etc. Okay. How can you differentiate from between bin that is 6 digits or 8 digits? You technically can't unless you have the VBAS application and are looking that up. Now that is available to acquirers, and it is also available to merchants. Merchants will need to ask their acquirers to be able to get that information. So please, if you are a merchant, go ahead and contact your acquirer on that. That will allow you to identify if a bin is 6 or if it's 8 digits. Is there a certification process with Visa for acquirers? I just want to make sure that I'm logging these off as being answered so that I don't get confused. Is there a certification process, excuse me, to repeat that question, with Visa for acquirers? So Visa does have a testing plan available for you all. That is available on Visa Online for acquirers specifically, and issuers. I do want to stress that the 8-digit bin or 6 or 8-digit bin are not used in VisaNet processing. So they're not used in the authorization, clearing, or settlement of a transaction. So when you're testing with Visa, you're testing your systems and how you manage, but Visa will not validate for you anything because it's inconsequential to us if the transaction is coming from a 6-digit bin or an 8-digit bin. Okay, Visa uses the issuer ID in transaction processing. That being said, if you do test with Visa, or you can test on your own, but if you do use one of the Visa certified testers, there will not be a testing complete letter. Visa cannot certify for you that your own internal systems are ready. That is something that you need to do internally. So not quite sure a little bit on this question. It says, can you explain again what was the main objective of having an 8-digit bin? The actual ecosystem itself or payment industry was growing rapidly, and there was a risk at one point that we would not be able to support increasing or growing in the future because of a limit of bins. So we've gone ahead, and this is not a Visa created mandate. This is an industry standard change run by the ISO organization, the Industry Organization for Standards. And this applies to all payment players in the ecosystem. So they moved it to 8 because it was the less impactful. It means that cards don't need to be reissued and less impactful for the business overall. So the 6th and 7th 8 digits, somebody's asking if I can repeat what they're representative of. If you have a 6-digit bin, your account range is digit 7, 8, and 9. It gives you, for a 6-digit bin, you have the capacity of having 1,000 account ranges. That's 000 to 999. Okay. With a 6-digit account, with a 6-digit bin, excuse me, you have a total of 1 billion cards that are available, keeping the standard length at 16 digits of PAN. With an 8-digit bin, your account range now, instead of having 1,000 combinations, you have 10 combinations. Each account range allows you to issue 1 million cards. Each 8-digit bin allows you to issue 10 million cards with a standard 16-digit PAN. So I hope that answers that question. If not, just go ahead and ping me with a follow-up. Will the card number length remain the same? Yes, that's one of the options that had been discussed in 2016, and it was decided that was too impactful for the ecosystem. So yes, it's staying the same. We're not changing. So if you are an issuer and you migrate to 8 digits with the existing PAN right now, with existing bin that you have, there should be no reason that you need to reissue unless you are doing some smart bin management and cleanup on your side. Okay, let's keep going here. So a person is stating that it's not clear to them which are the bins that change if the card number does not change. So instead of looking at the first 6, we're looking at the first 8. We're adding the 7th and the 8th digit. That will now be the actual bin from a PAN. So the first 6 digits, let me see if I can get to that slide just so that I have it up front and center for you in case. The bin has always been the first 6, and with this expansion, we're going to look at the 7th and 8th digit will be the total bin that will be assigned. So if you are the owner of 6, when you expand or explode out your bin or convert to 8 digits, you will now be the owner of 108 digit bins. You can decide, and this is more of an issuer question, but an issuer can decide looking at activity reports, since one 6-digit bin has a capacity for 1 billion cards, which one are they using and not using, and if they want to maintain and pay for all of those bins, or they want to return one to Visa. Okay, go back. Okay. When do you expect issuers to complete migration? There is a starting date and a pricing which encourages migration, but no deadline, correct? That is correct. Visa has not put out a deadline to issuers as of yet. We have stated that is as of April 2022, acquirers and processors, both issuer and acquire processors, need to be able to manage both 6 and 8 digit bins. However, the issuer has a discretion to migrate when they're ready. There are implications on pricing, and those implications were published in October 2019. And if any of you are on the issuing side and want to participate, next week on Monday, we will be having a pricing webinar that we will go over those implications of what pricing changes are taking place. There will come a point, the idea is that we all get to the point where the 8-digit bin is our standard across the entire ecosystem. So we are going to actively incentivize to ensure that issuers don't diddle daddle and they do move towards the 8-digit bin standard. Is there an 8-digit Visa test table we could use for testing? Are there any test cards with 6 to 8-digit bins for testing? There are, and that is available in the Visa testing guide. So if you're an acquirer, you can go ahead and go to Visa Online, and you can also contact your account manager for that information. So if the application name to check if it's a 6-digit or an 8-digit is called VBAS. If you are an acquirer, you can go on Visa Online, Visa Bin Attribute Sharing Service, VBASS, and that is available on Visa Online. It'll give you instructions on how to sign up and register, and if you can register your merchants. There's an API option as well, and that is available on Visa Online. Okay. So if an issuer stays at 6 digits, how will the pricing be applied? Good question, and I will refer you to Monday's presentation for specifically for issuers that we will go over the entire table for you on what those changes are and how those changes will be applied and impact different issuers that have different or mixed portfolios. It's a little bit long to go over right now, but I will I want to make sure that the information is available on Visa Online. We do have a recorded presentation there as well. But if you want to have live questions Monday at the same time, on November 1st, I will be available and we'll giving that presentation, that webinar. So the next question I have is if I'm expecting an impact on token and anything that should be considered. Token itself was set ready for this change because token works on account range. So that means that when you're working on token or when you're actually supporting token, you're already looking at the 9 digits, the first 9 digits. And that is the best practice of what we put out there. You shouldn't be coding anything to 6 or 8 digits. You should be taking into account the complete 9 of the account range. Will there be a webinar on the issuer perspective? We will be going over on the issuer pricing aspect next Monday on November 1st at 10 a.m. If you haven't done so, please, I invite you to register for that presentation. So Visa has done an analysis on all systems and applications that we put out there in reports, and we've made those necessary changes. It's important to note as well that that this numerics initiative has been part of the business enhancement release for years now. And this past October business enhancement release that just went in last, the Friday the 15th of October, it was Article 2.12. It is not your typical BER article or business enhancement release article because there are no systematic changes that Visa is putting in with this. It's just a change that you as merchants, acquirers, issuers, processors, all those that are taking place in the ecosystem need to ensure that they can process and manage. Okay, but there's no exact impacts that Visa is putting in. All Visa supporting applications and transaction types will be working at the 8-digit level and will be supportive of that. Okay. I think I caught up with most of the questions. Oh, wait, here we got another one. Will the way of obstructing the numbers of card, I think that's what the word was meant to be, the numbers of the card be changed? So we went over a little bit on the PCI standards. I'm going to go ahead and make this presentation available for you. But is that something that you need to discuss on your own? Internally in your own company to decide exactly how you want to manage that. It has not changed. If you are now showing the first 6 and the last 4, that's staying the same. You can have to look at the different receipt requirements that you guys need, why you would need to show the first 8-digit bins, and then decide internally. You can go ahead and talk to a quality security assessor for that. Visa technically can't make any recommendations. So readiness overall, I have a question if Visa will share regular updates on the readiness of issuers. Whether an issuer is migrating from 6 to 8 digits, there is no post that Visa is going to be putting out there announcing which issuers have migrated, right? If you look at your account range definition table, you will see the account ranges that have been added or removed. After a certain time period, when that bin gets reissued, that's when you will know if a new issuer has been added or is using that bin, the account range, excuse me. If you need to know exactly if a bin is 6 or 8 digits, then the only option that is available is a Visa bin attribute sharing service, which is the VBAS that I already went over, and that is available. More information is available on Visa Online. Once we do put in that hard code date for issuers, that will be announced with enough time through a Visa Business News or a VBN that will go out to everybody. It would not be done quietly. I'm sure that we will be announcing to ensure that any of those last issuers that are holding on for dear life to the 6-digit bins do go ahead and migrate before it becomes the final date. All right. Good question, guys. So I don't see any other question coming in at this time. I want to take advantage and say thank you so much for attending. And I also want to make this presentation available for you to download. So you will be seeing a window that will be appearing on your screen. I'll just go ahead and put this out there and see if you guys have any other questions. go ahead and do that. I just want to remind you that there is plenty of information is available both on visa.com and on Visa Online. I'm having a problem here trying to make this presentation available for some reason. So just give me 1 minute. Ta-da! Okay, so you all should have a black window or white, depending on your color preference, that says File Transfer. And there you will see that there is a presentation, a PDF version of this presentation called What Merchants Need to Know. So that is up on your screen now. You can go ahead and download. For any reason you find that you are unable to, just go ahead and please contact your account executive or your account manager, and they'll help you. If not, as always, this presentation is available on visa.com, and we will put this recorded version there as well. There is already an English version available, but we will be recording Spanish and Portuguese as well. So there is a question that just came up. It says if tomorrow's workshop explanation will be done in Spanish, and that is correct. Tomorrow there will be a session at the same time of 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time that will be in Spanish. You'll have the lovely pleasure of hearing my voice once again, or if you want to share with any of your colleagues, I'll be there in Spanish, and we will record that session and post it as well on visa.com. Then on Wednesday, we will have our Portuguese session where my Portuñol isn't that great, which is my mixed Portuguese and Spanish. We will have my colleague, Rafael Mata, who will be giving that presentation, but I will be there to support with any questions or concerns that you may have. And we will be making that, recording that presentation as well and posting that on visa.com and Visa Online. Perfect. So on behalf of all of us, I want to just thank you for attending today's session. We appreciate it. And if you have any questions concerning the 8-digit BIN migration, please reach out. We love to hear from you. I'm going to go ahead and leave this window on here for a couple of more minutes. And with that, we will end today's session. Thank you again.